What did you think of this decision yesterday?
Overall, I thought it was a terrific thing for the NCAA to do this, to allow spring sport athletes another year of eligibility. Does it create some issues, a little bit of a bottleneck? Of course it does. And they're going to have to ease roster sizes and also allow schools to give additional scholarships. But it's sort of like an airline canceling a flight. They don't just automatically put all the passengers on the next flight because it disrupts other passengers. So there's going to be some fallout from this. I think it would be best if the NCAA would allow incoming freshmen that are impacted materially by this to be able to just transfer and go somewhere else. There are all sorts of things they can do here. But one thing that they shouldn't do is whine about money and the cost of scholarships, because this is not that big of a cost. Most of the spring sport athletes pay their own way. For example, baseball has 11.7 scholarships for a 40-man roster. Most of those players are paying their own way. And, scholarships are not breaking the bank here. And the NCAA is not talking about sort of the expenses of the high salaries they're paying and the gigantic athletic departments they have and the facilities they have. They shouldn't whine about the cost of a few scholarships.
So then you bring me to something I was going to bring up later, but I'll get to it here, because Bobby Carpenter sort of alluded to this on Friday. We are all hopeful that the football season will be able to begin roughly when it is expected to and will be not impacted. That's the optimistic view, and there's no reason not to have it now. But in the event that football is significantly impacted by this, what impact would that have on the rest of the athletic programs that these schools have, and maybe on the universities as a whole, based upon the amount of money that is involved in football?
Well, it would be profound, not just because of the amount of money in football, but just because their entire business model is built off the revenue generation of athletics, basketball and football, and there are so many expenditures they have. So there are bills to pay. But you could sit and say, well, athletic departments could save a whole bunch of money if they just stopped giving scholarships. Well, they could. They could save millions of dollars. The problem is those scholarships are being paid to the university. So the university is getting that money, and that's going to their bottom line and their budget. So there's an argument to be made that the money coming to the athletic department goes straight to the university, and the university needs that money also. So there's a lot of moving parts here, but it's just, Greeny, it's just like any business. You budget based upon expected revenues, and when those revenues are not there, then you're gonna have to find places to cut and save money.
One other thing I wanted to ask you about, we mentioned that the spring sport athletes were granted an extra year of eligibility. They didn't do that for the winter sport athletes, many of whom got to play their seasons in their entirety. We think, of course, because it's the most prominent, of the men and the women who played their season but didn't get to play in the NCAA tournament. They did not grant them an extra year. What did you think of that decision?
Well, it's certainly reasonable not to grant that, simply because most of those sports had come to conclusion or near conclusion. So you'd be opening up something totally different for, say, Cassius Winston to come back to Michigan State. It would have been a nice gesture to allow that because they didn't get to finish their season, but the overwhelming majority of winter sport athletes had already finished their years. And that is a huge cost for athletic departments, because those are scholarship sports. Most of those sports, they're all scholarships. Men's and women's basketball, those are a lot of scholarships that they would have to pay for out of the athletic department budget. But again, one thing we're not hearing is about the cost of salaries of these gigantic athletic departments. We're bickering over the cost of scholarships and oh, whoa, if an athlete decides to come back, how expensive that's going to be. They're not talking about how much money they're paying to each other. And that's really the issue here. That's the main cost of college athletics, of the gigantic athletic departments and the gigantic salaries and facilities and debt service that they have as a result of all the spending that they've done.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.